2022 World Cup hosts Qatar is mired in scandal. It's under fire following reports of migrant workers on construction projects being abused. The mistreatment has been compared to slavery and has led to dozens of deaths. Well, football's governing body FIFA has expressed concern at the revelations, and a UN agency said Qatar is violating an international ban on the use of forced labour. This, coupled with the prospect of the Qataris switching the World Cup to winter because of the summer heat, has triggered calls to strip the Gulf state of the event altogether.
Our group decided to look at Qatar's 2022 World Cup bid and the human rights issues which surround it. Migrant workers make up 99% of Qatar's private sector workforce. Most of these workers came to build infrastructure for the upcoming World Cup. These people are making stadiums, hotels, roads, etc. Although they're working 15 hours per day, 6 days a week, they're only paid $8 per day. Shockingly, 90% of migrant World Cup workers had their passports taken away by employers. This means that they are not free to return to their home country. Sadly, more people will die during the building World Cup stadiums than players will take the field. Among the leading causes of death for workers is suicide. This is a reflection on the poor working conditions present in Qatar. Migrant workers are not allowed to unionize, so they really have no voice, and they're not allowed to enter stores, restaurants, or other public places. Sadly, one migrant World Cup worker dies per day, with 8 years until the 2022 World Cup. One death per day is absolutely not acceptable. That's a huge number of fatalities. The social movements surrounding Qatar have spread worldwide. Here are people protesting in front of FIFA's headquarters. Another two guys protesting "No more deaths," says their sign. So rerun the vote. This has been one of the largest campaigns. It's led by the International Trade Union Confederation, or ITUC, and they're asking FIFA to withdraw Qatar's World Cup bid. They believe that another country still has time to prepare for the World Cup since it is almost 8 years away. Here's a picture of some of the leaders of the Rerun the Vote campaign. This campaign has really spread very quickly in only a few months. It's garnered worldwide attention. And Walk Free is a campaign to end modern slavery that's actually focused now on the Qatar World Cup. And Walk Free's goals for FIFA, they're calling for an end to the working system in Qatar. They're saying that this really is modern-day slavery. And right now there are no labor rights, fundamental labor rights required for World Cup host countries, and they want requirements installed. And finally, they want to create an outlet for Qatar World Cup workers to report abuses. Right now, they have nowhere to report any workplace abuses, and they're really voiceless. So finally, my recommendations. I believe that the IUTC and Walk Free should collaborate. They can combine resources and create an extremely successful and powerful campaign. They should continue to spread their message. They've already, both sides have already garnered a lot of attention, and attention is great for them as they really voice their concerns about what's going on in Qatar. They should call on FIFA to rerun the World Cup host nation vote if working conditions do not improve drastically in Qatar, and these changes need to occur immediately, since there's one person dying every day on average.
Political aspect of the migrant workers and the Qatar World Cup. The political system of Qatar is a constitutional monarchy, with the Emir of Qatar as the head of state and the head of government. The first municipal elections with men and women voters and candidates were in 2007 and 2011. The first legislative election for 2/3 of the Legislative Council's 45 seats were in 2013. From a Western standpoint, the Qatari authorities seem to keep a relatively tight rein on freedom of expression and moves for equality. The Freedom in the World 2013 report by Freedom House lists Qatar's status as not free. On a scale of 1 to 7, with 1 being the most free, Qatar received a freedom rating of 5.5, a civil liberties rating of 5, and a political rights rating of 6. In June 2013, Qatar's Advisory Council passed a draft media law that would criminalize criticism of the Qatari government or its allies, and a poet was sentenced to life in prison in December for insulting the emir. Meanwhile, Qatar provided support during the year to opposition forces attempting to overthrow Syria's government. In 2011, the Democracy Index described Qatar as an authoritarian regime. Politics and the 2022 Qatar World Cup. It is reported that there was direct political influence in the vote to give Qatar the 2022 World Cup because some countries had major economic interests in Qatar. Qatar's representative on FIFA's Executive Council, Mohammed bin Hammad, was actually banned from football for life because of a scandal regarding the 2011 presidential elections. The political environment during this World Cup may be quite tense due to a clash between Qatar's conservative attitudes and the expectations of many football fans.
Legal implications of the kafala system. Freedom from forced or compulsory labor is one of the most important of the human rights coming within the sphere of competence of the International Labor Organization. Historically, it was among the first basic human rights subjects within the organization's mandate to be dealt with in the international labor standards. Today, forced or compulsory labor is almost universally banned, and the two ILO conventions on the subject are the most widely ratified of all international labor conventions. Under the kafala system, migrant workers work and live as sponsored individuals who are not offered many legal protections or opportunities due to their non-citizen status. Migrant workers are not able to leave Qatar without the consent of their employer, nor can they change jobs, rent a home, or open a checking account without the consent of their sponsor. Migrants also cannot join or form labor unions because only Qataris can be members of these groups. The inability of workers to freely associate limits their individual and collective choices, forcing them to live under the conditions prescribed by their employers. The ability to revoke or suspend passports provides employers with a great deal of leverage when dealing with the workers. If a dispute arises, companies can withhold pay or take passports in order to force the worker to conform to his or her wishes. Even if employees wish to terminate their employment or end their contracts, they are unable to leave the country until their initial sponsor gives consent. Since workers are unable to leave the system or alter it through collective action, they live in a status of forced labor, bordering on the fringes of modern slavery. Qatar has addressed some of the international calls for kafala reform by unveiling a workers' right charter and promising to improve the enforcement of current labor laws. In 2014, Qatar issued the Migrant Workers Welfare Charter, which pledged to hold all construction companies accountable to better standards of health and safety. The Qatar 2022 Supreme Committee, which is overseeing the preparation for the World Cup, crafted the charter with the help from the ILO. The charter encompassed many of the recommendations made by the ILO, such as relinquishing the abilities of companies to hold passports, but Qatari officials did not adopt minimum wage standards or collective bargaining agreements. Efforts to reform the kafala system have brought about positive changes to the migrant situation in Qatar. Although circumstances have improved in the last few years, the ILO can continue this positive process by looking to continue to encourage open dialogue between the organization and officials about the plight of workers and how these issues can be addressed and working closely with Qatari officials to ensure that contractors are following the Convention of Forced Labor by helping to develop clear strategies for inspection, implementation, and sanction. In order to improve the status of migrant workers under the kafala system, the ILO must encourage open dialogue about the current labor situation and compliance with the Convention of Forced Labor. Although great abuses have been found, the Qatari government still has the opportunity to enact meaningful and lasting changes.